Welcome to another story written by Oracle 1. The Rooms That Changed Shape of the Storm-Battered Lighthouse. Chapter 1. The storm had been waiting for him. Elias knew it the moment the first wave struck the rocks beneath the lighthouse, sending a tremor up through the cliffside and into the soles of his boots. It was not the violence of the sea that unsettled him, nor the relentless howl of wind that clawed at his coat and pressed cold fingers down his spine. It was the timing. The sky had been clear when he left the mainland. Pale, stretched thin with distant clouds that promised nothing. The crossing had been quiet, the water calm enough to mirror the gray horizon. But as the lighthouse came into view, thin, leaning slightly against the sky like something that had grown tired of standing, the storm gathered with unnatural speed. Now it raged as if it had always been there. As if it belonged here. Elias gripped the rusted railing of the narrow dock as the small motorboat lurched beneath him. The man who had ferried him across refused to meet his eyes. "You're certain?" the ferryman shouted over the wind. Elias nodded once. "I won't be coming back tonight," the man said. "I know." The ferryman hesitated, then leaned closer. "Don't go wandering," he said. The words were strange. Not a warning of the storm. Not of the unstable cliffs or the crumbling stone. Something else. Elias frowned. "What do you mean?" But the man had already pulled away, shoving the boat back from the dock. The motor roared to life, and within seconds, he was retreating into the rain and darkness, leaving Elias alone with the towering shape of the lighthouse. For a moment, Elias stood there, the storm battering against him, the sea raging below, and considered turning back. But there was nowhere to go. And he had not come this far to hesitate now. He turned toward the narrow path that led up the cliff. The lighthouse loomed above, its white paint long since peeled away by years of wind and salt, exposing the gray stone beneath. The lantern room at the top flickered faintly, the beam cutting weakly through the storm before dissolving into rain. Someone was still maintaining it. That thought brought little comfort. The climb was steep, the stone steps slick with water. Elias kept one hand against the cliff wall as he ascended, the rock cold and damp beneath his palm. The wind howled past him, carrying with it the sharp scent of salt and something older, something metallic, faint but persistent. Blood, his mind suggested. He ignored it. At the top of the path, the lighthouse door stood shut. Heavy, wooden, reinforced with iron bands that had rusted into jagged patterns. Elias reached for the handle. It was warm. He paused. The storm roared behind him. Slowly, he pushed the door open. It did not creak. It shifted, as though it had been waiting. Inside, the sound of the storm dulled immediately, reduced to a distant, muffled presence. The air was thick, carrying the scent of oil, damp stone, and something faintly sour. Elias stepped inside. The door closed behind him. The entry room was small and circular, its walls curved inwards slightly as they rose. A narrow table stood against one side, cluttered with old tools, a lantern, and a stack of yellowed papers weighed down by a rusted wrench. A spiral staircase wound upward along the inner wall. Downward, a narrow corridor extended into shadow. Elias stood still, letting his eyes adjust. The silence pressed in, not complete silence. There was sound, subtle, irregular, a faint shifting, like wood settling, or something moving just out of sight. "Hello?" Elias called. His voice echoed oddly, bending around the curved walls before fading too quickly. No response. He moved toward the table, his fingers brushing the edge of the papers. They were damp but intact, covered in tight, cramped handwriting that filled every available space. He skimmed a line. "The rooms do not stay where they should." Elias frowned. Another line. "They move when I am not looking." A third. "Sometimes when I am." He set the papers down slowly. The floor beneath him creaked. He turned toward the corridor. It had not been that long. It could not have been. But he was certain. The corridor was longer now. He stared at it. The walls seemed to stretch, the far end receding into deeper shadow than before. Elias blinked. It remained. A trick of the light, he told himself. The storm, fatigue, imagination. He stepped toward it. Each footfall echoed. Softly, the sound swallowed quickly by the thick air. The walls were close, the stone damp beneath his fingertips as he moved forward. There was a door on the left. He was sure of it. He had seen it from the entrance. But when he reached the spot, there was nothing, just smooth, unbroken stone. Elias stopped. He turned slowly, looking back toward the entry room. The distance between them felt wrong. Too far. The door he had entered through was smaller now, or perhaps farther away. The spiral staircase remained, but its curve seemed tighter, more compressed. Elias's chest tightened. No, he murmured. He walked back, faster this time. The entry room shifted subtly as he stepped into it, the walls adjusting with a faint, almost imperceptible movement, like breath. The table was not where it had been. It had moved closer to the staircase. Elias stared at it. The papers were gone. He spun toward the corridor. It was shorter now, much shorter. The far end just a few steps away. The door. There was a door. On the right this time. Half open. A dim light flickered within. Elias hesitated. The storm groaned against the walls, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to come from within the stone rather than outside it. He took a step toward the door. Then another. The floor beneath him felt uneven, subtly sloping in ways that shifted as he moved. He reached the doorway. Inside was a small room. Circular. A narrow bed pressed against one wall, its sheets rumpled as though recently used. A lantern burned low on a crate beside it, the flame flickering despite the absence of wind. Elias stepped inside. The air was warmer here. Thick. He turned slowly, taking in the space. There was no other door. Just the one he had entered through. He moved toward the bed. The sheets were damp, not with water, with something else, something warmer. Elias pulled his hand back. The lantern flickered, once, twice, then steadied. A sound came from behind him. Soft. A shift. Elias turned sharply. The doorway was gone. There was only wall. Smooth. Unbroken. His breath caught in his throat. No, he whispered. He stepped forward, pressing his hands against the stone where the door had been. Solid. Cold. Unmoving. The room had sealed. Elias spun around, his heart pounding. This isn't possible. The lantern flickered again. The light dimmed, then flared. And in that brief, trembling brightness, the room changed. The bed was gone. The walls stretched outward, widening into a larger space. The crate elongated, splitting into two. The floor shifted beneath his feet, the stone rearranging itself with a low, grinding sound. Elias stumbled, grabbing at the wall for balance. The air grew colder. The lantern light dimmed again, now farther away. No longer beside him. Across the room that had not been there before. Elias stared, his breath shallow. This isn't real, he said. The words felt thin, unconvincing. The lantern flickered, and something moved in the darkness beyond it. Not the room, something within it. Elias took a step back. The floor shifted under him again. The walls curved inward, then outward, breathing slowly. The space stretched, contracted, changed, and from somewhere deep within the shifting structure of the lighthouse, a sound echoed. Not the storm, not the sea. A voice, low, distant, and far too close. Stay, it whispered. The lantern went out, and the room began to change again. Chapter 2. Darkness did not fall all at once. It gathered. The lantern's flame shrank into a thin, trembling thread of light before collapsing entirely, leaving behind a dim afterimage that clung to Elias's vision like a stain. For a few seconds, the shape of the room remained. etched in memory rather than sight. Then it shifted. Elias heard it before he felt it. Stone grinding against stone, but softer than it should have been. A damp, sliding sound, like wet surfaces pressed together and pulled apart again. The floor tilted subtly beneath his boots, then steadied, then tilted again in a different direction. The room was not still. It was rearranging itself in the dark. Elias stood frozen, his hands half raised as if bracing for impact. The air pressed in on him, thick and humid, carrying the sharp tang of salt and something faintly rotten beneath it. "Stop," he said. His voice sounded wrong here. Swallowed, absorbed, as if the space itself refused to let it travel. The movement slowed, not stopped, just slowed. Elias exhaled shakily and reached into his coat pocket, his fingers brushing against the cold metal of a lighter. He pulled it out, his hand trembling slightly, and flicked it open. A small flame burst to life. For a moment, the room seemed normal again. A narrow chamber. Bare stone walls. The floor uneven but solid. No bed. No crate. No sign of the space he had just seen. Elias turned slowly, holding the flame out in front of him. The walls curved too tightly now, closing in like the inside of a throat. There was no door, no opening, just stone. He stepped forward. The flame wavered. The wall moved, not visibly, not in a way he could track. But the distance between him and it changed. Elias stopped. His pulse pounded in his ears. He reached out. His fingers brushed the surface. Cold, damp, solid. He pressed harder. Nothing. Behind him, something shifted. Elias turned sharply. The flame flickered wildly as he spun, stretching shadows across the walls in distorted shapes that seemed to move independently of the light. For a brief instant, the room looked larger. Longer. A corridor extending into darkness. Elias blinked. It was gone. The walls were close again. Too close. "No," he whispered. He turned in a slow circle. The space refused to stay consistent. Each movement of his head altered it slightly, the curvature of the walls, the distance between them, the height of the ceiling. The lighthouse wasn't just changing. It was responding to him. The realization settled into his chest like a weight. Elias took a careful step backward. The floor dipped beneath him, sloping downward where it had been flat moments before. He stumbled, catching himself against the wall. The instant his palm touched the stone, it shifted. The surface softened, not like flesh, not entirely, but enough that his fingers sank into it slightly before the hardness returned. Elias yanked his hand back. A faint imprint remained in the stone. Then it smoothed itself out, as if it had never been touched. His breathing quickened. "This is wrong," he said under his breath. The flame flickered again. Lower. Elias shielded it with his hand. The air felt thinner now. Colder. The smell of salt intensified, sharp enough to sting his nose. And beneath it, something metallic. Stronger now. Fresh. He turned toward the source instinctively. The wall ahead of him stretched. Not physically, not in a way he could fully perceive, but the space between them widened, pulling away as if retreating. Elias stepped forward. The flame guttered. The room lengthened. Another step. The ground leveled. The walls straightened. A corridor formed. Clear. Defined. Real. Elias froze. This was new. This was stable. The corridor extended ahead, narrow and slightly curved, its walls lined with faint vertical grooves that ran from floor to ceiling. Water trickled down them in thin streams, catching the dim light of the flame. At the far end, a door. Elias stared at it. It hadn't been there before. He was certain. The thought of turning back flickered through his mind. But there was no back. Only change. Only movement. He swallowed and began to walk. Each step felt deliberate, as though the corridor watched him approach. The grooves in the walls deepened slightly as he passed, the trickling water growing louder, forming a soft, persistent rhythm that echoed through the space. Drip, drip, drip. It matched his footsteps perfectly. Elias slowed. The dripping slowed. He stopped. The dripping stopped. The silence that followed was immediate. Complete. Elias's chest tightened. He took another step. Drip. The sound resumed. In perfect time. Elias's grip on the lighter tightened. The flame trembled. He reached the door. It was made of wood, dark and swollen from moisture, its surface marked with deep scratches that ran horizontally across it. Not random, parallel, measured, as if something had clawed at it repeatedly, always in the same place. Elias hesitated. The air here was colder. Still, the dripping behind him had stopped again. He turned his head slightly. The corridor stretched behind him, but it seemed longer than before. Far longer. The end was no longer visible. Only darkness. Elias faced the door again. He placed his hand against it. It pulsed. Faintly. Like a heartbeat. Elias's breath hitched. He pushed. The door opened inward with a low, dragging sound. Beyond it, a room, larger than the corridor, circular. The walls lined with shelves. Not bookshelves. Something else. Elias stepped inside slowly, raising the lighter. The shelves were filled with objects. Dozens. Hundreds. Shapes that were difficult to define at first glance. Then his vision adjusted. They were pieces. Fragments. Parts of rooms. A doorknob. A section of wall with peeling paint. A fragment of a window frame. A piece of flooring. Each one different, each one carefully placed. Elias stepped closer to one of the shelves. A small wooden panel sat there, its surface worn and splintered. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched it, the room shifted violently. The floor lurched beneath him, throwing him off balance. The walls stretched outward, the shelves elongating, the objects sliding and rearranging themselves with a deafening grinding noise. Elias hit the ground hard, the lighter slipping from his grasp. The flame went out. Darkness swallowed everything. The movement didn't stop. It accelerated. The space twisted, folding inward and outward simultaneously. The sensation was disorienting, nauseating, as though the room could not decide what shape it wanted to be. Elias scrambled to his feet, his hands sliding across the shifting floor. "Stop," he shouted. The word was swallowed instantly. Something brushed against his leg. Not the wall. Not the floor. Something else. Elias froze. The movement around him slowed. The grinding softened. The air thickened again. He didn't move. He didn't breathe. The thing brushed against him again. Higher this time. His waist. Slow. Deliberate. Elias's throat tightened. "Who's there?" he whispered. Silence. Then, a shape formed in the darkness. Not by light, but by absence. A section of the room where the darkness was deeper. Denser. It shifted slightly, separating from the rest of the shadow. Elias's heart pounded. "That's not," he began. The shape moved closer. And as it did, the room changed again. But this time, it didn't change around him. It changed to accommodate it. The walls bent outward, the floor flattening, the ceiling rising, creating space. Making room. Elias stumbled back, his heel catching on something solid. He fell, scrambling away on his hands and knees. The shape followed, silent, watching, though it had no eyes. Elias's hand brushed against something cold. Metal. His lighter. He grabbed it, flicking it open with shaking fingers. The flame burst to life and illuminated the thing in front of him. It was not a figure. Not truly. It was a distortion, a section of space that did not align properly with the rest of the room. Edges that didn't connect, angles that folded inward, as if part of the lighthouse had been cut out and placed back incorrectly. It shifted again, and for a brief moment, Elias saw something within it. A glimpse. A room. Different from this one. A narrow staircase. A lantern. And someone standing there, watching. Elias's breath caught. The image flickered. The distortion moved closer. The room expanded. Again. Making space. Always making space. Elias scrambled to his feet and ran. The shelves blurred past him, the objects rattling as the space shifted violently around him. The door appeared ahead, where it hadn't been seconds before. He didn't question it. He threw himself through it. The corridor slammed back into place around him, the walls snapping into their previous positions. Elias didn't stop running. The dripping resumed, faster now, matching his pace. Drip, drip, drip. The sound grew louder, closer, until he realized it wasn't coming from the walls anymore. It was behind him, following. Elias risked a glance over his shoulder. The corridor stretched endlessly, but something moved within it. Not chasing, keeping pace. The space itself bending around it, accommodating it. Elias turned forward again, his breath ragged. The corridor began to narrow. The walls closing in, the ceiling lowering, forcing him to slow, forcing him to crouch. The dripping grew louder. Right behind him, hot breath touched the back of his neck. Elias gasped and stumbled forward. The corridor vanished. He fell into the entry room, crashing hard against the stone floor. The door to the lighthouse stood ahead of him, closed, unmoving. The storm roared faintly beyond it. Elias pushed himself up, his entire body trembling. Behind him, silence. He turned slowly. The corridor was gone. Only the spiral staircase remained. Unchanged. Still. As if nothing had happened. Elias staggered to his feet, backing toward the door. "This place," he whispered. The staircase creaked. Once, Elias looked up. The darkness above shifted. And from somewhere higher in the lighthouse, footsteps began to descend, slow, measured, and with each step, the walls of the room subtly changed shape, as if something above was rearranging everything below. Chapter 3. The footsteps did not echo. They pressed. Each step from above sank into the structure of the lighthouse, sending quiet distortions through the room around Elias. The curve of the walls shifted slightly with every movement, the floor dipping and rising as though responding to a weight that did not follow the rules of gravity. Elias stood frozen at the base of the staircase. The door behind him remained closed, unmoving, unreachable. The storm beyond it had become distant, irrelevant, a muffled roar swallowed by the breathing stone of the lighthouse itself. Another step from above. The spiral staircase tightened. Elias blinked. It had not been that narrow before. The gap between each step shrank, the curve drawing inward, forcing the center into a tighter coil. Something was coming down, and the lighthouse was making space for it. Elias's throat tightened. "No," he whispered. The word felt fragile here. Pointless. Another step. Closer now. Elias forced himself to move, turning away from the staircase and rushing toward the door. His fingers wrapped around the handle, twisting hard. Nothing. He slammed his shoulder against it. Once. Twice. The wood didn't budge. It absorbed the force, like something alive. Behind him, a shift. Elias turned slowly. The staircase had changed again. It no longer spiraled upward. It stretched, unwound, extending straight into darkness above, no longer bound by the shape of the tower. And on it, a figure, descending. At first, it appeared human. Tall, thin, its outline flickering with each step, as though the space around it could not hold its form steady. Elias backed away, his breath shallow. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure stopped. It tilted its head. The motion was wrong. Too smooth, too precise. "You are already asking the wrong question," it said. Its voice came from everywhere at once. Not from its mouth, not from its body, from the walls, from the floor, from the air pressing against Elias's skin. Elias shook his head, panic rising. "Stay away from me." The figure resumed its descent. Each step caused the room to change. The walls expanded slightly. The ceiling lifted. The floor flattened. Not for Elias. For it. "You keep moving," the voice continued. "But you do not understand what moves with you." Elias stumbled backward, his shoulder brushing against the wall. It softened. Briefly. Then hardened again. "I just need to get out," he said, his voice cracking. "That's all." The figure reached the bottom step. Now it stood in the room with him. Close enough that Elias could see its face. And yet, he couldn't. The features were there. Eyes, nose, mouth. But they refused to settle into a consistent shape. They shifted subtly with every glance, never aligning the same way twice. "You came here because you noticed," it said. Elias's mind raced. Noticed what? The figure took a step closer. The room widened. "You saw the edges," it said. The places where things did not quite fit. A memory flickered. Elias, standing in his apartment, staring at a doorway that seemed slightly narrower than it had been the day before. A hallway that felt longer at night. A room that seemed too small in the morning. He had dismissed it. Every time. The figure's voice deepened. "You were not meant to notice." Elias's chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" The figure stopped directly in front of him. "You think this place is changing," it said. Elias swallowed. "It is." The figure tilted its head again. "No," it said. The word settled heavily. "Final. This place is correct." Elias stared at it. A cold dread spread through him. "What?" The figure's form flickered. For a moment, the walls disappeared. The lighthouse vanished. And Elias saw something else. Endless structures. Rooms connected to rooms, stretching in impossible directions. Spaces folding into one another, overlapping, shifting, but never breaking. Perfect. Consistent. Alive. Then it was gone. The lighthouse returned. Rotting. Cramped. Wrong. "This is what you call change," the figure said. "Because your mind cannot hold the shape of what is real." Elias shook his head violently. "No, that's not. This place is wrong." The figure stepped closer. The room expanded again. Always adjusting. Always accommodating. "You are wrong," it said. Elias's breath caught. "What?" "You were not built to see this," the voice continued. "So your mind reshapes it. Simplifies it. Forces it into something you can survive." Elias stumbled back. His foot caught on nothing. He fell hard against the floor. The surface rippled beneath him, briefly soft before solidifying again. "No," he whispered. The figure crouched. Its face, or what passed for one, hovered close to his. "Look again," it said. The words pressed into his skull. Elias tried to turn away. He couldn't. Something held his gaze. Forced his eyes open. The room changed. Not gradually. Not subtly. Completely. The walls unfolded, peeling away into layers that revealed more space beyond them. The floor split into overlapping planes, each angled differently, each extending into distances that did not make sense. The staircase stretched infinitely upward and downward at the same time. Rooms appeared within rooms. Doors opened into spaces that looped back into themselves. Everything connected. Everything moved. Not randomly. Not chaotically. Perfectly. Elias's mind strained against it. His thoughts fractured. "This isn't real," he gasped. "It is the only thing that is," the figure replied. Elias's hands pressed against his head. "It's too much." "Yes." The word was almost gentle. "You were never meant to hold it." The space around him continued to expand, layers unfolding endlessly. The lighthouse was no longer a structure. It was a fragment, a simplified shell wrapped around something vast. Elias's vision blurred. The shapes refused to settle. They overlapped, merged, separated. Every attempt to focus only revealed more. More angles. More rooms. More impossible connections. It's breaking, Elias whispered. The figure's voice lowered. No, it said. You are. Elias's breath hitched. The realization struck slowly, like something surfacing from deep water. I can't see it, he said. Not as you are. The figure reached out. Its hand, or the idea of one, touched Elias's forehead. The contact was cold, endless. Let go, it said. Elias's body trembled. His thoughts unraveled. Memories flickered and dissolved. The shape of his life, his home, his past, his identity, began to lose its edges, breaking apart under the pressure of what he was seeing. I don't want this, he whispered. You already crossed the threshold, the figure replied. Elias's vision shifted again. The lighthouse shrank, collapsed, not physically, conceptually. It became smaller, simpler, a crude imitation, and beyond it, the real structure expanded infinitely. Rooms within rooms within rooms. No beginning, no end, no fixed shape, only constant, perfect change. Elias felt something inside his mind give way. A final resistance snapping under the weight of it. His breathing slowed, then stopped. He didn't need it. His eyes adjusted, not by focusing, by letting go of the need to. The shapes no longer fought him. They made sense, not as human space, but as something else, something larger. Elias stood, or something that had been Elias. The figure watched him. Now you see, it said. Elias nodded slowly. Yes, he replied. His voice was calm, stable, no longer strained. The lighthouse reformed around him. Smaller again, contained, but he could still feel it. The vastness beneath, the truth behind the disguise. The others? Elias asked. The figure tilted its head. They did not adapt. Elias's gaze drifted to the walls. For a moment, he saw them. Shapes pressed between layers of space. Fragments of people caught in the folds of rooms they could not understand. Trapped, endlessly shifting. His expression did not change. And me? He asked. The figure stepped back. The room adjusted. Perfectly. You will remain, it said. Elias looked toward the door. It opened, easily. Beyond it, the storm raged. The real storm. Small, contained, meaningless. He stepped forward, paused, then turned back. The lighthouse stood still, waiting. Not a trap, a threshold. Elias smiled faintly, and stepped outside. Behind him, the door closed. Inside, the rooms continued to shift. Perfectly, endlessly. For more stories, like and subscribe.